All right, let's jump right in. Today, we're digging into a huge fight over one of the most powerful and honestly least understood institutions out there, the US Federal Reserve. And this isn't just some minor squabble. We're talking about a clash between two totally different visions for the entire American economy.
So let's start with the quote that really kicked this whole thing off. When Kevin Warsh, who was in the running to be the next Fed chair, called for regime change. Wow, that wasn't just a polite disagreement. That was basically a declaration of war on the Fed's current path, sending a signal that the whole institution needed a top-to-bottom shakeup.
And look, this isn't just some boring debate for economists in ivory towers. What we're really seeing is a fundamental conflict over who should be steering the ship, who should be in charge of the country's money supply, and maybe even more important, what the Fed's mission should even be in the first place. Okay, so let's explore one side of this first, the argument that the central bank is just fundamentally broken. This point of view says that its current leadership has lost the plot, and the only way to get the economy back on track is with a really radical shift.
So what's the beef here exactly? Well, critics say the Fed's policy mix is, quote, exactly wrong. Think about it. They're holding this gigantic balance sheet, which is something you'd normally see during a massive financial crisis, but at the same time, they're keeping interest rates super high for regular folks and small businesses. To these critics, that contradiction just makes no sense and is chipping away at the Fed's credibility, making it look like its decisions are driven by politics, not economics.
And this number just perfectly captures the critics' point. A renovation project at the Fed's headquarters has reportedly swelled to an estimated $4 billion. Now, for the people pushing for regime change, this isn't just about a building. It's a giant flashing symbol of what they see as mismanagement and total fiscal carelessness. And you can imagine, that kind of spending led to some incredibly sharp accusations. I mean, that price tag actually triggered calls for the Department of Justice to launch an investigation, not just into the spending, but into whether the Fed's leadership was even telling the truth when they testified to Congress about the project. So, from this point of view, the only real fix is a complete fresh start. The proposed solution is to bring in new leadership, somebody like Kevin Warsh, and give them a very clear, very simple mission. Shrink that massive balance sheet and cut interest rates to give Main Street some breathing room.
Okay, now let's flip the script completely. There's a totally different analysis out there that says all this focus on the Fed is just a distraction, a smokescreen. The real thing putting the squeeze on the US economy, they argue, is actually coming from the fallout of tariff policies.
And the debate over tariffs really boils down to two very different ways of looking at them. On one side, you have the view that tariffs are a strategic weapon. They're leverage you use to push other countries into giving you better trade deals. But on the other side, the view is much simpler. Tariffs are just a tax, and the people paying that tax are American companies and, ultimately, you, the consumer.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. A report from inside the Fed system, from the New York Fed actually, tried to answer that question, who really pays for these tariffs? And their conclusion was pretty shocking. They found that an estimated 90%, 90, of the cost lands on American consumers and companies. Only about 10% is actually picked up by foreign exporters.
And the reaction to this data-driven conclusion? Whoa. It was swift and it was harsh. A top economic advisor didn't just disagree with the research, he called the paper an embarrassment, and even suggested that the people who wrote it should be disciplined, maybe even fired.
This side of the argument frames tariffs as what's called a regressive tax. So what does that mean? The basic idea is that because tariffs raise the prices on everyday imported goods, they hit lower-income families the hardest, since those families spend a much bigger chunk of their paycheck on those exact kinds of products.
Okay, so we've got these two big competing ideas. How does this stuff actually translate into real-world policy? Well, the housing market is a perfect example, because it's a place where interest rates and direct government action both play a massive role.
And to get this, we need a quick primer on two absolute giants in the housing world, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. You can think of them as the crucial plumbing of the mortgage market. They keep cash flowing so that banks always have money to lend out to people who want to buy a home.
So the Trump administration made a really bold move here. They ordered Fannie and Freddie to go out and buy $200 billion worth of mortgage bonds. The whole point was to jump directly into the market, control something called mortgage spreads, and ultimately push mortgage rates down for home buyers. And according to supporters, it worked. They say it led to a whopping 40% jump in people refinancing their homes. And that action just perfectly lays out the tension at the heart of this whole debate. On one side, you have people looking at inflation being down around 1% and saying the Fed's high rates are just crushing Main Street. But on the other side, you have the Fed's own committee voting 10-2 to hold rates right where they are, saying, hey, we need to be careful, we need more data, we're not so sure the inflation fight is over yet.
So when you boil it all down, what are we really looking at here? It's two completely different philosophies. This goes way beyond one or two policy decisions. It is a fundamental clash over how the entire US economy should be run.
And this table just lays it all out so clearly. You have Vision A, the challengers, who see a mismanaged Fed that needs a complete overhaul, and they favor direct action. Then you have Vision B, the institution, which sees itself as a data-driven body that's under political attack, and they argue that tariffs are the real problem. And the paths forward that each propose, well, they could not be more different.
Ultimately, this fight is about so much more than charts and economic theories. The winner here will determine the economic philosophy that guides the country, and that's going to have real, tangible consequences for your job, for your savings, for the prices you pay every single day. So the final, crucial question is this. When these big ideas collide, who ends up bearing the cost and who gets to reap the rewards?